You're watching Special Dialogue, the second anniversary of MNC Business channel. This special dialogue brought to you as a part of the special talk show program Roadshow. The special dialogue also have the special topic that will be Indonesia and US potential economy in the future in the middle of crisis. And to discuss about this special topic, we also have the special guest for you. His Excellency Scott Marciel, the US Ambassador to Indonesia, here directly from his residence.
When I was a little baby, a mama's boy, no one could save me from those kids at school. They would bully.
Hello, as the topic is about Indonesia-US potential economy in the middle of crisis, now I'm with the special guest, His Excellency Scott Marciel, the US Ambassador to Indonesia. Now in the first segment, we will talk about the general review about global economy. Hello, how are you, Mr. Ambassador?
Well. How are you?
Thank you for having us here.
It's my pleasure.
So first of all, talking about the general review of our global economy, who affected between relationship between U.S. and Indonesia. How do you see this, first of all?
Well, I think we all know that the global economy is not growing very fast. A lot of countries are facing slower economies. Our economy is growing slowly. It's growing, but not as fast as we would like. So it has some impact on trade. But actually, it also creates an opportunity because both Indonesian and American companies can look for more trade and investment opportunities with each other.
But global crisis affected about all regions. United States, European is the most, like we can say, like affected so much. So how do you see this about relationship? Because we are international relationship between one country to another country should be built well.
Right. Well, I think it's at a time of economic difficulty that I think all countries and companies have to look for more opportunities. And so what we're trying to do is use this difficult situation to try to create more opportunities for our companies, both American and Indonesian, and we think there's a lot to do.
Talking about Asia Pacific, a few days ago, a PAC committee has done a meeting that produced to save the global economy with the stimulus and any kind of policies. So do you see this as a good opportunity, maybe in the future the global economy will survive?
Sure, I think it's important that all these international meetings work to try to strengthen the economy, and APEC over many years has done great work to reduce barriers to trade, because trade really helps economic growth. And I think the last meeting in Vladivostok also took some positive steps, so very helpful.
Global economy is slowing down, so what is the impact to the U.S., maybe in general?
Well, certainly our economy is growing just under 2%, which is slower than we would like. We have still high unemployment. It's not as high as it was a few years ago, but still over 8%. So, you know, and our exports have been hit also by the slowing economy. So like everyone, we're affected.
Talking about the relationship with the trade that you mentioned before, it's about export and import activities between two countries, multilateral and bilateral. So do you see this, the relationship between Indonesia and U.S. will be continue?
Absolutely, it'll continue. What we want to do, and this is really important, is to strengthen the trade and investment relationship. We have pretty good trade between our countries, but frankly, for the size of our countries, we could be doing a lot more. So that's what we need to focus on.
What is actually the factors that could make U.S. and Indonesia survive? How do you see this?
Well, you know, I think actually Indonesia is in pretty good shape, relatively speaking. When you look at the global economy, still over 6% growth. And the U.S. growing slowly, but certainly not in crisis. So we'll survive, but to get greater prosperity, as I said, we have to really try to remove the barriers to trade and investment so that we can find more opportunities.
You're talking about investment that European countries now is really maybe in the one of the lowest levels that they have been through. So do you have any maybe suggestion or maybe any opinion towards European economy now?
Well, certainly Europe has been hard hit. I don't think it's my place to give advice to the European economies, but they certainly have been working very hard to deal with their major debt problem, and I think the whole world has an interest in them succeeding.
China is also slowing down. Australia is also slowing down. Maybe this is our problem together to be solved. So, any opinion or any suggestion?
Well, I think the world's economists and financial leaders are all meeting regularly to talk about how to get growth going again, and there's no simple answer. Each country has to do what it can, but certainly efforts to avoid protectionism are important, maintain financial stability, but also continuing to promote education, entrepreneurship, innovation, because that's really how we're going to get more growth.
Yeah, talking about innovation and how innovation is made in every country. So what strategy that possibly could develop our long-term relationship between U.S. and Indonesia?
Well, we have this comprehensive partnership, which I think has really helped to bring our countries closer together. On the economic side, we're working very hard to bring more American companies here, to encourage Indonesian companies to go to the U.S. We have to stay after that, and as I said, remove any potential barriers.
Potential barriers. So, in the middle of crisis, there's still hope between us to maybe survive. Absolutely. Don't go anywhere, stay with Special Dialogue. We'll come back. You're still watching Special Dialogue 2nd anniversary of MNC Business channel, and now I'm still with His Excellency Scott Marciel, the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, talking about the U.S. and Indonesia potential economy in the middle of crisis. So, continue our discussion. How do you see the Indonesian economy now in the middle of crisis? Because now Indonesia is considered as one of the biggest moving country of economy.
Yeah, well, relative to a lot of other countries in the world, Indonesia is doing well, more than 6% growth, although it's, I think, slowing down a little bit. I think Indonesia has a huge opportunity now because so many companies around the world are looking at Indonesia as a place to invest. I think recently there have been a whole series of regulations and laws that have been passed that maybe have caused some companies to hesitate. But I think if those can be clarified and the investment environment continue to be improved, I think Indonesia can do very well.
Talking about uncertainty in Indonesia, about energy policy towards maybe the fuel prices and electricity rate prices. How do you see that? Is it make the investors hesitate, like you mentioned before?
Well, I think the energy prices and the subsidies have some impact on investors who are looking at the power sector because they want to make sure they can get a reasonable price. But I think the bigger issues that investors are looking at is certainty and contract sanctity and those sorts of issues.
Do you, any opinion or suggestion with our government about this? Because we are big countries. From Sabang to Merauke, we should finish so many problems for social economy, social culture. So do you see any difficulties maybe as a moving country in United States? Any suggestion?
Well, my rule here is that Indonesia is growing at 6% and we're growing at 2%. So we probably shouldn't give you too much advice. But what I hear from Indonesians, of course, is the importance of building the infrastructure, continuing education, and trying to improve the overall business environment so that both foreign and Indonesian investors feel comfortable.
Talking about infrastructure, because previously Mr. Jose Fernandez came to Indonesia talking about the memorandum of our understanding of infrastructure development or cooperation to support Indonesian economy fundamental. How do you see this?
Well, this is a great opportunity. Indonesia clearly wants to build infrastructure. Your president has said that some of that money will have to come from foreign investors. We have a lot of U.S. companies that are very good at infrastructure. The purpose of this MOU with the Ministry of Industry was to facilitate dialogue and cooperation so that U.S. companies can come and, I hope, contribute to the development of Indonesia's infrastructure.
How is the follow-up itself?
Good. We had a very good conference just a few months ago on airport infrastructure, which is an area where U.S. companies are quite good. And next week we have both in Washington a global infrastructure conference that will feature Indonesia, and of course your president will be in New York for Indonesian Investor Day.
Talk about further about infrastructure. Do you see that infrastructure in maybe in the big cities in Indonesia, such as Jakarta, is well enough to maybe to welcome the investors to come and to support their business in the future?
Well, I think what I hear from most people here is that of course, traffic is an issue, and sometimes energy. So I think in any big city, there's always more work to be done.
traffic is always threatening maybe the distribution could edit the operational cost of the industry itself. Talking about now the potential market, we got huge population, maybe 230 million people. Do you see this as a potential also of business, maybe not for only for United States business, but also for the world?
Absolutely.
Do you see this? How do you see this?
Well, sure. Indonesia is already a large economy, and it's growing rapidly. A lot of people think Indonesia will be one of the top 10 economies in the world in the next decade. So it's a huge market already, and likely to be a very big market for both Indonesian companies and foreign companies.
But sometimes it's focusing in West Java or maybe Jakarta or Java Island as a market. So any potential of Indonesia to maybe to spread the business and the investment to the other islands so that the investor or foreign investor could come with highly positive.
Yes, there is. In fact, there's good growth in places like East Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan, and I think certainly potential for more in Sulawesi and further east. Absolutely.
Domestic consumption in Indonesia is helping our growth economy. So do you see this as a good factor, or maybe become a time bombing in the future?
Well, I think it's a good factor. I think it only becomes a time bomb if it depends too much on debt. If people are borrowing to consume, as we've learned in the United States, that can be risky. But if it's based on increased incomes, I think it's very good.
Okay, we'll be continue after the break.
Okay.
We'll be back with more discussion. Stay with us in the special dialogue.